Welcome to another Third Apron Salary Cast. I am your host, Yossi Goslin, NBA salary cap analyst, and this is another mock-off season. This time on the LA Lakers, where I do hypothetical moves, mainly for fun, but also to show how they could accomplish certain goals within the salary cap rules. I've already covered their offseason extensively. I had one of our guests here on last month to discuss them, and I've also written about their salary cap dynamics on the Third Apron newsletter on Substack. I put the links in the description below. I highly suggest you check them out for a little more context on what we're going to discuss. But joining me to go and assist me with these moves, but mostly critique them and just kind of see what we can really try to gather, what we can really see happen. Making his Third Apron debut, he is the editor for SB Nation, Harrison Faigen, and making his return from our discussion last month, host of the Lakers Lounge podcast, Anthony Irwin. So before we get into anything, I'm just going to say right off the bat, we had a lot of difficulty with this one, putting moves together. I had more difficulty putting this compared to some of the other ones. It just felt that whatever we wanted to do didn't feel realistic enough for another team to accept with the Lakers' minimum amount of assets available. And then whatever we could do just didn't seem like it was all that appealing for the Lakers.
It's the thing that they're going to run into this summer is, with all of the dynamics at play and everything, all the boxes that they need to check. It's really difficult. It's almost as difficult as getting the three of us on a pod together. That was also a bit of a journey to arrive here too. I also want to mention I'm officially a friend of the show and Harrison is not, because this is my second appearance. Just,
I'm an acquaintance of the show.
Yeah. You're somebody we bumped into.
So
I was going to say the whole exercise of you putting this together, Yossi, did make me feel both better and worse in that it was like I didn't feel as bad about not being able to come up with compelling fake trades and stuff like that, but worse in the sense of this means Rob Pelinka and Kurt Rambis are going to be figuring this out. And so now I'm like a little concerned.
Well, we also, when we started planning this, there was a big change in the organization. We are doing this we are recording this after the sale of the Lakers. Do you guys think there might be any impact at all significantly as far as how that might shape things?
My guess is no for this year. Anthony would know better than me, but my guess is I don't think it's going to impact free agency or the offseason all that much one way or the other.
I actually kind of disagree. It's just when you have new ownership. Now, look, maybe their focus is elsewhere. It did happen right up against the draft, and that does leave, very little time for any real organizational shift. But I do think that there's a decent chance that Guggenheim doesn't have the close affinity for some of the guys that the Lakers' previous regime did, or current regime did, or maybe future previous regime did.
So we're going to do this mock-off season a little differently, where I tried my best to come up with these moves. We discussed some of these, as far as just kind of putting together, gathering names. And Harrison and Anthony, they're mostly going to review them. They're going to tell me what they think, the chances of getting it done if they like it for the Lakers. Now, before we get into anything, we do need to go over their payroll, because it's very much up in the air how they want to do it. And I'm going to pick the direction that I want them to go, and I'll explain why. I'm taking a lot of liberties with this one, so bear with me. Now, as far as goals, though, for the most part, we know they're going to go after a big man, maybe two. Any other needs that you have, you would like for them to prioritize?
Go ahead.
Probably
Harrison.
getting more athleticism on the wing, maybe trading out some of the fours for some the 4-3s for some 3-4s type of thing. If you can't, I mean, again, all this stuff is going to be difficult to do, but that is where they have probably the most pressing need, is more type of, like every NBA team, they need wings.
Wait, you said they have a pressing issue and you didn't mention the center?
No, he said center. He said besides center.
Aside from the center. Okay. All right. I was going to say,
You're like, is JJ Redick on the pod with me right now? We need more wings.
Hold on. I was legitimately terrified.
Yeah.
For your mentions, like if that would have been your actual
Yeah.
answer.
The traditional
Uh,
big man's dead, Anthony. You just need five guys to play all 24 minutes of a half, okay?
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, they're gonna hire Steve Prefontaine's ghost to train the Lakers this upcoming season. But yeah, yeah, the center spot obviously, I guess, apparently goes without saying. Um, I also think, Harrison mentioned the wing position, foot speed. This is a very slow team. Anytime of 40, he'll be what, 41, 42 years old next year. Anytime a 41, 42-year old is your fastest player, I have concerns.
Just
I
41.
have,
You don't need to prematurely age him. He's going to be 41, okay?
okay, my bad,
It's
my bad.
every year counts at this point.
Well, I think he would still, at the age of 45, be the fastest person on this roster. And I have concerns about that. So they need it. Like it's not just the athleticism because like Rui is a fairly decent athlete, but he's more kind of brutish. Um, that's it. That's the extent
I was
of
going to say
it.
end of like Bronny,
End of oh,
is
okay. I
Bronny
guess
third?
Bronny. Who do you think's faster, Braun or Bronny?
Bronny's got to be faster at this point, right? Like he's not better at basketball, just pure like open gym speed. Like Bronny's probably faster.
Probably. I don't know. Once LeBron gets going, he has those longer strides. So, but I
Yeah.
guess, on a basketball court, you don't have as much time to get going. But the fact that we're debating which LeBron James is faster on this Lakers team is probably not great.
So let's go over their payroll and I will get to the conclusion as far as how I want to go about this. So I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet, which will be blocking me. I think it'd be pretty rude if I had it anywhere else on this chat. So right now they've got about 12 players on their roster, a couple pending player options, mainly LeBron and Dorian Finney-Smith. Already a lot of reporting suggesting that LeBron will probably pick his up, and it would probably take some like massive addition in free agency for him to take less. Now, right now, they are projected to be like pretty close to the first apron and about like 16 million or so below the second, assuming everyone picks up their options and the roster more or less is like running back exactly how it is. Now, if they are going to be below the first apron, they're going to have a lot more flexibility towards building out the roster. They would be able to use expanded trade acceptance, meaning that they can take in more salaries than they're sending out. They won't have to do a 100% match like they did last year. They managed to get the Luka trade done that way, but also they had Anthony Davis making more money than him. And assuming LeBron and Luke aren't going anywhere, it's going to be harder to make those types of moves for a bigger target making like 25 million or so next year. Not only that, they'd be able to use the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. They could acquire players in sign and trades, free agents via sign and trades. So this would put them in a much stronger position to bring in top free agents as well. I don't think they're going to get any of the top ones, but they could get some significant ones for sure. So if LeBron were to pick up that player option, then you're kind of set on operating above the first apron and below the second. In which case, you have to do 100% match in trades. You get limited with the $5.7 million tax mid-level exception, which honestly it's useless. Like teams barely use it. The Lakers could probably get someone just as good for the minimum, which is only like a couple million less. So I'm going to operate as if we're going to be below the first apron, which means LeBron's going to have to take a significant pay cut, something like around $10 million. I said I'm going to take some liberties, and that's going to be the biggest one I take, I think, so far.
Yeah, I personally have been planning for the Lakers to be above the first apron or no,
Below?
below the first apron. And then it just kind of depends on how far below. But yeah, the point that you made about being able to take back more in trades is a big part of this. And there are reasons for it. I remain skeptical that LeBron would take that big of a hit without a ton of clarity beforehand. The Lakers only have now a matter of days, depending on when this airs, between now and the draft. Now, I was told that the Lakers are hoping to get their, some clarity from LeBron on his decision with his player option before the draft. So we might be able to get that decision here in the next couple or few days. And I know that the reports out there are that he's going to opt in. Um, I I don't necessarily. It's not that I disagree with the reporting. There are really, really good reporters, floating that information. I just don't see the reason for him to do so. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The Lakers would pretty happily give him any contract that he wanted. So if he wanted another one-and-one type deal, he could easily get that. If he wanted to keep his no trade clause, I'm told that that wouldn't be a problem either. I know that there are some people, who are a little bit closer to Clutch who are, I guess, wonder a little bit more about that no trade clause. But, from what I've heard, the Lakers wouldn't have some hardline negotiation with LeBron as they haven't with Kobe, with Magic, with all of their previous superstars. That's just not really how they operate. But I think he opts out. I don't know if he takes a $10 million pay cut.
Yeah, Yossi, that's the thing in the reporting that I'm wondering if maybe you can clarify for me as someone who is not a cap expert at all or like a salary, on the agent side, that kind of stuff. What is the benefit for LeBron in opting in like beyond $50 million? Because like Anthony said, like I can't foresee the Lakers having a contentious negotiation for him, like with him. Is there any sort of benefit to him that we are missing in just straight up opting in versus, doing the one-on-one like he has been doing?
Yeah, I mean, if you at this stage in his career, if he is trying to maximize his earnings, and it would make sense for him to opt out, because then he actually could get a higher max, because the salary cap rose a little higher than what his player option this year is going to be. So if he really wants to like get every dollar, that is something he can do. Then that's about it, and it's not even that much more money. But the main thing is that. My argument is that even if the Lakers don't get someone immediately, and this is something that Anthony and I discussed last month, is that even if you're not going to get a guy like last year, who are the names that he was willing to take a pay cut for? Reportedly, it was like Harden, Klay Thompson. Even
DeMar
if
DeRozan.
they can't,
And Jonas
Jonas
Valanciunas. How
Valanciunas.
dare you forget Jonas Valanciunas?
So if even if the Lakers aren't set to get someone that LeBron like deems kind of worthy, I guess, of taking that pay cut immediately, I still think there's a stronger case that he should anyways, because even if you don't get someone now, you should still, Lakers are better off having that flexibility below the first apron heading into the trade deadline, because then that's like a whole nother market. That we just saw the Lakers last year. They didn't get anyone in free agency, and then they got a top 5 player at the trade deadline. So why not keep that apron flexibility so you could do you don't have to do 100% match trade. Makes it a little easier to do trades in the around the deadline in case you don't get someone now. So that's just my argument. I think he should take a pay cut no matter what, just like some reduction to help the Lakers both now and in the next 6 months. So here's a contract that I came up with where it's essentially the same type of structure in terms he's doing a 1+1, but I have him taking approximately $10 million less. So comes out to 2 for 87. And I'm going to go over later that if he shaves about $10 million off, that is going to give the Lakers, based on the rest of their payroll structure, enough flexibility to use the entire non-tax pyramid level exception at $14 million. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to then use that amount. They could instead bring someone in with a sign and trade or increase their payroll by that much. But I'll just use 14 million as like that proxy figure just because it also is the mid-level. So at the same time, he has that player option, so he can also revisit this again next year if he wants to opt out, because something that I'll touch on much later, Lakers could have cap space in 2026. And I would imagine that most likely the Lakers try to leverage that to make a trade this summer or this season for a top target, maybe a guy that could be a top free agent next year. But that's just something to keep in mind, that if LeBron does end up doing a salary reduction, does end up opting out in general, I would expect he does something so he has the option to opt out later.
Yeah, he's always historically like that flexibility, one way or another. That's why it was so unique when he gave the Lakers a 4-year full contract where there were no player options. Was it a couple contracts ago? Um, the other place too, Yossi, that I'm sure that you've considered as a means for the Lakers to have a little bit less on their payroll is Dorian Finney-Smith. If he opts out, he could sign a 2-year deal, making a little bit less than he was due to make if he were just to opt in. But that would get him, more total money on his contract, even if he would be making a little bit less than he could have. That would be another slight haircut that the Lakers could potentially. I don't know if I would go so far as to say that they would plan for it, but it's certainly a in the realm of possibility.
Yes, so let's get into him because I came up with the new contract for him as well. So when Dorian got traded to the Lakers, I felt like he'd probably get a deal that builds upon what he's currently making. So he's got that $15.4 million player option. Now, fast forward to free agency. I'm thinking at best he's probably looking at making around what he's currently making. I don't think it's going to be like a very strong market to be a free agent this summer. And even though he's a player that most teams can plug in pretty seamlessly, we saw last year guys like Derrick Jones Jr., Najee Marshall go for a little less. I get the feeling that might happen to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who we'll touch on a little later. So here's a structure I could see him getting where he gets like a slight bump. It's kind of like a repeat of his previous deal. So roughly $2 million less on the first year. So, and then with 8% raises could run for 4 for 60. I feel like that's something kind of reasonable, and to protect the Lakers because he is 32 right now, make it non-guaranteed on that last year. Because if you're Dorian Finney-Smith, you're 32. Try to get as many years as possible, I think. So I think this is pretty reasonable. You're probably still above the market for what the rest of the league might offer for him. Uh, but you're getting him at like just below the full mid-level. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of reasonable. Maybe he ends up just picking up his option and figuring it out later because he could extend at any point during the season if he does pick it up.
Yeah, he also just got surgery, so that might, he dealt with that ankle issue for a lot of last year, and I believe cleaned that up surgically just recently. So he might, after the surgery, just say, "I'm just going to pick up my player option." But it also might be more reason for him to try to tack on more years. I don't think the Lakers would go so far as 4 years, even with that fourth year being non-guaranteed. I think it would probably be a 2-year guarantee, maybe a third year non-guaranteed type of a deal. That said, if you're Rob Pelinka and you have a brand new boss, who why would you care about long term money? That might be funny to a funny little subplot to this summer as well.
Yeah, I would think that if you're DFS and you just had the ankle surgery and you're at the age that he's at, you would want to lock in the longer years
Yeah.
more than like because it's like there's no guarantee that you even have a good season next year coming off
Mhm.
of, ankle surgery. Like the wheels fall out from under guys all the time, and you don't know that you're going to get as much next summer, or have as strong of a negotiating position where with a team that has your bird rights and wants to pay you and is incentivized to keep you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just think both sides kind of need each other where he might, if the market's going to be lower on him, then the Lakers are his best chance of getting a long-term deal. And the Lakers, they didn't give up nothing to get him. They
Yeah.
already don't have like any second round picks. As I'm gonna go over their draft situation a little later, but they only have 2 second round picks left now. They traded 3 to get him. So I do think this is one of those situations where, yeah, I suppose if the market's pretty low, the Lakers could try to squeeze him for lower years, maybe a little lower dollar amount. But I think ultimately they can come to something that's a little more reasonable on both ends. So with those two moves done, here is what we're working with. I've got LeBron with that $42 million salary I laid out, Dorian Finney-Smith with that $13.4 million salary. And one other thing I did, I had them decline Jordan Goodwin's team option. It was $2.3 million and re-sign him to a 1-year veteran minimum. You might be thinking, well, why would Jordan agree to do that? He's actually making more money because the 1-year veteran minimum costs less for the Lakers, but his actual minimum is going to be more than what that team option would be. So Lakers save like 100,000. He gains like 100,000. I'm keeping Shake Milton for now. He's non-guaranteed. He's got a July 20th guarantee date, so no rush to cut him just yet. Maybe we'll find a trade for him. So if he is gone, then the Lakers are effectively working with $20 million below the first apron. So that is enough flexibility to use the full mid-level and use the expanded trade exception. You can increase the payroll by about like $8.5 million in a trade. So I just wanted to set the parameters on what we're working with. So now that we do, we can start to get to work. All right. So here's the Lakers draft pick situation. Not great at all. They have 5 in their next 8 drafts, but they could only trade 1, either their 2031 or their 2032, but they can trade up to 4 swaps. So the most, like, if they wanted to like technically trade every pick and swap they could, then ideally they want to trade their 31 first and then swap out all the even numbered years. They could swap them out in 26, 28, 2030, and 2032. Now, I feel like the Lakers basically showed their hand when they did the Mark Williams trade, trading a 31 first and a 2030 swap plus connect for him. And I think that they'll have more options and a better chance at getting a big man in free agency versus the trade deadline. It's not a guarantee that they trade a first this year. Maybe they can get one without it, but I think they'll have a better chance at finding a specific target that can be a long-term option, in which case, okay, I think they might consider doing it. And like I mentioned just earlier, only 2 second-round picks at their disposal. They're 2025, and then the 2032 is going to open up. So with all this is really the big thing that makes any deal so complicated right now for the Lakers.
Yeah, I hate the Stepien rule. It's really, really annoying. It's probably time to do away with it.
We have enough rules to save the dumb owners from themselves, and they still keep finding rakes to step on. Like, it's like you can't legislate out mistakes. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that one in specifically, if a team wants to trade away all of their, because the problem with Stepien was he was trading away first rounders to save money. But, nowadays, if a team decided it wanted to trade away all of its first rounders, it would be to go out and get a star probably. And that's the kind of thing that I don't think that the NBA should be protecting owners from. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I think to your point, the Suns may have to fold if Ishbia is allowed to trade like all of their first round picks unprotected, just like move them all around and just completely give it up. It's like they're going to have a 7-year like literal desert there in Phoenix.
Would you miss the Suns?
That's rude.
You know that the Suns are actually like on track to accomplish trading all their own first round picks, even like while getting around the Stepien rule. Because they traded all those odd numbered years for Durant. So 23, 25, 25, 27, 29. Then they ended up getting unprotected first in those years back from that Jazz trade. So once you get an unprotected first back, then that kind of like resets your Stepien thing. So then they ended up trading their 26 to Charlotte. And now they could still trade their 28. Eventually, they could trade their 2030. Like they might actually accomplish what you're saying.
Never mind. We don't have to repeal it. He could do it all on his own.
Yeah,
they need to do a remake of that Jurassic Park meme. Ishbia finds a way. No, but as far as like the draft pick situations and stuff like that, the other part of it that makes I don't know if you mentioned this, but the other part of it that even further complicates their draft situation is their pick swaps are pretty worthless because they have Luka. So what team is going to be like, okay, I need to get this deal over the hump. What if you give me a pick swap that almost certainly isn't going to convey? It's just really kind of tricky there. So
Well, not just
Even
that
the
they have
few
Luka,
assets
but
that
that
they do have.
theoretically you're giving them your star, in exchange for those pick
Yeah,
swaps. And so you're like adding to the chance that those pick swaps are going to be worthless.
right.
So I dug deep to see which teams value pick swaps, and that's going to come into my calculations a little later. But let's go over the deals I came up with, and this is the first one. Um, I went ahead and traded for two players that the Lakers have been rumored for a lot recently, bringing in both Walker Kessler and John Collins from the Jazz. So John Collins has a $26.6 million player option. So this has him opting in. So then he can get traded, which he's likely to do anyways. As far as salary matching, so like we said, we're gonna do expanded trade exception. They don't need to do 100% of this $31 million amount. So they only need to get within 8.5 million. So they only have to get to this much, 22.9 million. So as far as the value, I have them sending out a 2031 first and then two swaps versus they only had one. They only traded one in 2030 in the Mark Williams trade. And to make the money work, they're sending out Vanderbilt and Kleba as well as Dalton Connect. So they make the money work. For the Jazz, a lot of things need to happen for them to get to the conclusion to trade him. One, that maybe he won't be as good as they hope he'll be. He's going to be extension eligible this summer. They have to conclude that maybe he won't be as good as like a $25 million player or so. Like I'm guessing that's around what he's going to command based on how the center market has risen recently. After canvassing the league, they'd have to decide that this is maybe the best opportunity and the best they can get. And I do feel like the Mark Williams package would be acceptable if this is the best and they just decide that they wanted to move on. And they'd have to decide also, we are so far away that why keep him? He's a little older than you might think. He's about to turn 24. So all these reasons, they'd have to just decide, okay, you know what? It's best to move on from him now. I still find it unlikely. I still think there are more benefits. But if they if they came to the conclusion that they want to trade him and this is the best package, I think it's acceptable. You guys can tell me what you think. You can push back if you disagree. As far as Collins, I just don't think he has all that much value. So I think the additional swap is fine.
Yeah, the Utah thing is tough because they already own the Lakers 2027 first rounder. And so if you send your starting center to a Luka team and like you've just made your asset worse, and that's what they and the Lakers have that's the brick wall that they keep on running into with their negotiations. Or one of the things I have kind of wondered about, because I reported that the Lakers and Jazz talked a little bit about a John Collins Rui Hachimura swap, and I've kind of wondered if that would potentially be expanded to include Walker Kessler, if the Lakers just included all of their draft capital. One of my listeners actually made a really good point in that, and Yossi, you can maybe clarify this, but if Utah agrees to turn the 27 pick that the Lakers owe them into a swap, they can technically, the Lakers can technically offer a different, a second first rounder into that deal. Did they have that correct? It sounded right to me when I looked into it. How does that work?
So yes and no. I remember this was something I think I even raised to you before the Luka trade, where why don't the Lakers do a trade where they get Walker Kessler and their 27 back, and then they could trade the Jazz like two later first, and which would be like 2031 and 29 at the time. Now that's kind of changed because they traded their 29 to the Mavs. So if the Jazz are sending the Lakers back their 27, all it does is open up their 26, which I think at that point the Jazz would rather keep the 27. So I did look into that when I was doing this, but I realized it doesn't really help anyone at this point.
I kind of wonder if
it's funny. I was doing the same thing, trying to figure out, is there a way that the Lakers can almost like defer that pick down the line, get the pick back, but then give the Jazz some sort of future one so that they feel like, they're not devaluing their own asset. They're just pushing it off down the line. But
it's all messed up. It's all messed up because they traded 29, because now they can't trade 28 or 2030. So it was a fun
rule.
yeah, the step being rule. No, it was definitely an interesting way to like make it make it a little more feasible, I think, for both sides. But now it doesn't really help. So I mean, how do you guys feel about it as far as like something that Jazz might consider?
I still, I remember last year and certainly the year before, but really last year there was all that talk. Oh, maybe Kessler this, Kessler that, Kessler this, Kessler that. Whenever I was talking to people, especially closer to Utah, it was like he's not available. And when you talk to anybody who heard anything about those negotiations, it's like they set their price so high on Kessler that he essentially may as well have been unavailable. It does change now that he gets closer to his extension number, and then we got to see, how the draft kind of falls, whether it falls in their favor or not. I think if they would have been in position to draft Cooper Flag, maybe they would be in a better mood and would be more open to trading Walker Kessler. But they fell the way that they did. There's a lot of uncertainty about the 4 picks before them. So, it's one of those things that, yeah, the Lakers could technically get him, but they would probably have to pay more than they're willing to pay to get a Walker Kessler.
Yeah, the thing that I was looking at was like, is there an Austin Reaves deal construction that makes sense where like you can like the Jazz or some other team that wants Austin can feel like they're getting, like additional value, but Kessler's just not good enough to me to make that swap worth it. Like Austin's just clearly a better player, and I just don't know that if you're the Lakers, you're getting enough back in any of those deals because of how little he makes. I mean, Kessler making so little also helps, but it's just I don't know who else you're tagging in there that makes that a good swap.
I agree. And I think that'd be a good segue to talk about how we just also couldn't find an Austin Reaves deal. I think that's especially one where I think the Lakers probably value him way more than the rest of the league does.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be very hard for them to get the type of all-star level player that makes that like they would want to even conceivably consider moving him. But like I don't know how other teams feel about Austin. Like, he is on the last year of that trade. He's gonna be due for he's on the last year of that cheap contract. He's gonna be due for a big raise. How other teams feeling about trading him? So that was just way
He's
too
not going to sign his
complicated.
extension. Like that's
Right.
the part of it that's the big wrinkle that makes it really difficult for this is that no matter where he goes, whether he stays with the Lakers now, whether he gets moved to somewhere else, no team can, it's not even like well, maybe just maybe he'll sign his. No team can confidently say that guy's going to sign his extension, which then you risk some other team swooping in free agency and whatever, because the Lakers are expecting an all-star in return. So that team could have traded an all-star and then lost the guy that they traded an all-star for nothing in only a year. So is 1 year of Austin Reaves ever going to be worth trading away the type of player the Lakers are demanding in return?
I mean, this is obviously not the same caliber. This is obviously a higher caliber player than Austin, but we've seen so many of these deals where, like the Pascal Siakam thing with Indiana, where, he gets traded there. Technically, the Pacers had no guarantee that he would stay or whatever,
Yeah.
but they had basically pre-negotiated, we're going to give you the max. Or will you take that? Will you stay in Indiana? And like they had all, it was a gentleman's agreement. And so see teams reach these sorts of, theoretically illegal agreements all the time. And so I do wonder if there is a team that does value Austin and is like, hey, we want to agree, we want to do pre-agency, we want to negotiate this contract with you now for next summer, but it's an exploding offer. Like, do you want this? Maybe there
Yeah.
is a team that values him in that respect, but it's also hard to see who that team is that's also trading a star back to the Lakers that then wants
Yeah.
to go and pay Austin, 150 million or however much.
Yeah, that what his next contract is, that's the other thing that complicates that is that if he continues playing at this level he had last year and even improves upon it, he's probably looking at Tyler Hero money. I would have to guess
Yeah.
like around $30 million a year. And Tyler Hero is another player. He's kind of polarizing a lot of teams. Like, the Blazers famously did not want him for Damian Lillard. So it, Reeves is right now. It's different that he's making $15 million. Who knows how teams feel about the possibility of making closer to 30. One framework I thought about for a long time, but ultimately just realized it's probably not enough, and the salaries are just way too complicated, is while we're on the topic of Utah, like what if instead of bringing in Walker Kessler, they could have done something based on Reaves, the 31, and salary fillers for Lauri Markkanen. I don't think the Lakers would have enough. I don't think that's enough to get that done now, especially seeing after what Desmond Bane just went for.
That's also, if I'm the Lakers, that's not the deal that I'm made. Like, that's like the one position they're sort of set at is like, four big forward type guys. So I don't know that Laurie helps you enough, in terms, again, he's a good player. I think it's like, it's a terrible fit for what the Lakers roster actually needs.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, technically, the type of player that I would want to trade Austin for is like Max Christie 5 years from now. Like a two who defends his tail off, who knocks down open shots, who operates in small windows and stuff like that, but is also really bleeping good. And that's just and also the other thing too that needs to be pointed out here in terms of because I often see a tone, especially on Twitter, where it's like, I don't think the Lakers are going to trade Austin, and people start kicking stuff. The idea of Austin and LeBron and Luca getting a full offseason to operate at a much higher level offensively, schematically, is something that I'm legitimately curious about, maybe even excited about, because what we saw from them last year was your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, and they just it didn't work in the way that it needed to. How many Luca Austin inverted pick and rolls did we see? The LeBron Austin pick and roll kind of went away in the playoffs. That used to be their meat and potatoes in clutch situations before Luca got there. It was very clearly three players who were, trying to work this out on the fly. And I would like to see those guys get an opportunity to a full offseason. I know that Luca and LeBron have already spoken at length this offseason about what that would look like, and they've started theorizing some of that stuff. I don't know. People talk about it as like, oh, well, they aren't going to trade Austin. Well, there goes the offseason. It's like I would kind of like to see what that looks like.
So
It's also just, again, as we've been talking about, there aren't that many Austin trades that make logical sense for both sides. And so that's also it's like, there goes the opposite. It's like, well, what do you want them to do? Like, show me the move that they're supposed to make that the other team agrees to that makes sense for both parties. And that's the really tough part because of how much he makes and sort of where the Lakers value him versus Yossi, like you were talking about, potentially where the rest of the league does and the extension complication.
So after going through that exercise, trying to see what there is for Austin, I've traded their last remaining first round pick and probably their most valuable swaps. If we can't trade Austin, which is probably the next best way for the Lakers to improve the roster, then the next thing their best way to improve the roster probably isn't through trade at this point. Probably the best thing they can do now with this flexibility is sign someone in free agency, since it wouldn't cost you any assets. So I went ahead and signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I went over his contract valuation, same kind of principle applied with DFS, where I feel like most likely he also gets a little less in the full mid-level. So if you're the Lakers and this is the best player you can get, why not be a little more aggressive? If you need to offer the full thing in order to secure his services, go ahead. I get the feeling the Wolves are going to be comfortable letting him go if the offers get this high, unless they get like a big discount from like Randall and Naz Reid picks up his player option, which seems unlikely. Do they need to go the full years? I don't know, but this is the full mid-level exception at 4 years, 60.6 million. So then you bring in another point of attack defender, which is much badly needed. We address another big wing, like one of the priorities that you guys mentioned. Definitely a rumored target for the Lakers over the past few months. Wouldn't, and it wouldn't. I could see the Lakers also just trying to do this after going after him after Minnesota beat them so handily. Let's go and steal one of their best players, just to hurt him a little bit.
And we know Rob watched those games, so it's like he's aware of Nikhil Alexander-Walker. So that's also a plus for the Lakers. Yeah,
Walker wasn't that good in the series though, so I wonder if like
oh,
Rob's
never
like,
mind. That rule, check that one off.
yeah.
I do think that he's sort of like, if you're talking about free agency targets, that is sort of the dream guy available in that he actually fulfills Lakers' needs, and you're not going to have to. I mean, maybe you can argue that's an overpay, but you're not going to have to overpay. Like, hey, we got to give Brook Lopez $6 million over multiple years when he's sort of not the ideal center for a Luka team and is only getting older. Like Na is like sort of the ideal target that you can get in free agency, provided, again, that you get this sort of pay cut from LeBron and DFS, and, there's a lot of hurdles to clear there.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot in text back and forth, Yossi, but like his market seems to be all over the place because there are some people saying he won't get as much as the full mid-level. There are some people saying he might get 20 million. One of the teams that might have been interested in him was Orlando. They just traded for Bain, so maybe that takes a potential suitor off of the board and maybe brings that number down a little bit. It's going to be really interesting to see where his market winds up. And we just saw this last year where a lot of players' markets wound up well below what we thought they were going to be. And this is why so many agents want their guys signing extensions to avoid free agency because the markets have completely dried up. Teams know that they aren't going to be able to find too much talent using that as an avenue. So it's a treacherous climb for those who are trying to get raises that way.
Yeah, and there are like about 10 teams, if you include the Nets, that can comfortably offer Nikhil the mid-level range without either going to the tax or like exceeding whatever apron is applicable to them. And if the Lakers do get LeBron taking a salary reduction like I'm recommending, then they could be one of those teams. I could see I could get behind them offering him the full thing if that's what it takes to get him away from Minnesota and beat other offers. I could also see the Lakers just doing this. Like, this just does seem like the type of move that they would pursue with their full mid-level. We know that they went after Bruce Brown very hard 2 years ago. Seeing a guy like a nice role player overperform, who I don't even know if that's fair to say that about Nikhil Alexander-Walker, but like he's just playing way above his contract. The Lakers tend to reward these guys. Dorian Finney-Smith, another type of guy, like just he's the type of guy that, another team like the Mavs, they identified and developed him. Lakers generally, they acquire those guys after they've been made. So just a move I could definitely see happening. I would guess at the very least they will pursue him. So that leads to our last move, because having done this, I actually have the Lakers having too much money on their books, and I need them to save some so they could stay under the first apron. So I went around the league to see, as you asked earlier, what teams actually want pick swaps. And there's a couple. OKC, they value pick swaps. San Antonio, they have a lot of pick swaps, which is going to help them down the line. The Wizards, then I remembered, they got a bunch in the Bradley Beal trade. They've got like a bunch of Suns pick swaps. They also just got one from the Bucks in the Kyle Kuzma trade. So I did this trade. It's mainly a money-saving move where we're getting off Gabe Vincent's $11.5 million. This is in the Wizards' perspective where they only need to get to half of Gabe Vincent's salary. So to do that, I had them sign and trade Malcolm Brogdon, so to the exact that exact half amount, the minute required for them to make this trade work. And they're also getting a first round pick swap from a 2028 first round pick swap from the Lakers. So with this, the Lakers mainly save money, but also if they trade Connect, I do think they could use another shooter, and Brogdon usually shoots between like the high 30s, low 40s. Last year that he just did not shoot well at all. So you'd hope that, that was just a one-off thing. But if the Lakers are interested in a guy like him, it would be very hard to get him, having already used the full mid-level. So why not save some money, bring him in a sign and trade now that you can do that? And the biggest thing with a guy like him is unavailability. They could also go after another veteran guard like a Chris Paul. I'm sure the Lakers will be linked to him in the coming weeks. But the main thing is that if they're going to give him this contract, it would be like a 3-year deal, but only the first year needs to be guaranteed. That's just the sign and trade rules. So why not bring him in? If you're able to bring him in while saving money on Gabe Vincent, you already brought in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, so now you're like your guard rotation is pretty much set. Like the Lakers have a pretty deep top 8 now with everything I put together. That's not counting Malcolm Brogdon. So, Gabe Vincent might not even play that much. So, not getting below the first apron, something I could see the Wizards doing. But yeah, this is just mainly a financially motivated trade.
Yeah, I don't dislike it. I don't necessarily see why Washington does it. I think Brogdon's better than Gabe, and more importantly, he's bigger than Gabe. Yeah, Pete said this on the show, and it's just kind of stuck in my head, where it's like the Lakers basically need to have a line. It's like, you must be this tall to ride this ride, and that line needs to be set at 6'5". There's just no. You have Luka at point guard essentially. You have Austin, who can handle some of the point guard capabilities. You have LeBron. There's no real need to employ outside of some of the defense, which if you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker on your team potentially, outside of the defense and foot speed, there's no real need to employ a traditionally sized point guard. So yeah, I personally I don't dislike it. I just don't necessarily see why Washington does it. Harrison, you don't like it.
For the swap.
I just don't think. Yeah, I just don't think that Brogdon is going to play. And I don't know, like a swap to get off of $6 million feels like a lot. But at the same time, I guess you could argue from the Wizards' perspective, they're also taking a risk on the swap, because it's like, what are the odds that their pick is going to be worse than the Lakers in 2028 and they'll actually like get to use that? The odds are not high. And so I guess you could theoretically say it's like almost a nothing asset in that case. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just like on principle, I don't like the idea of it, but I can see the logic in it.
Yeah. Now, to your point, yeah, Brogdon basically wouldn't play, because here, I'm going to pull up the final roster now, because here's what we've ended up putting together. We got, LeBron, Nickeil Alexander-Walker in, Dorian Finney-Smith, the modified salary, Brogdon at the amount I gave him, Collins in as well. So they are able to field a roster within the first apron. They're about $1 million below it. I also added a salary for their second round pick, the 55th overall pick, and they'd have to get 2 more minimum salaries. So the biggest thing is, one, they are 8 deep from here and Walker. So if the Lakers are fully healthy, Brogdon probably wouldn't play that much. I just feel like the Lakers do need a situational shooter, because if they had Connect still here, Connect wouldn't really play. So if you can get a guy making quite like as much like a Brogdon type, just to have situationally, I think it's just good to have another level of shooting. And then Anthony, to your point, this team is still pretty slow. Too many walkers. Got a walker here and a walker there. Yeah, not a lot of
no Texas Rangers,
no runners. So yeah, I mean, so this is, I feel like, kind of like the high end scenario of how I could see the Lakers offseason going. If they get a LeBron salary reduction, then they could operate below the first apron, because again, like, they wouldn't be able to, I don't think they'd be able to realistically have a roster quite this deep otherwise. I think they'd be hard pressed to get something else done considering the assets they have. So I think being able to do something in free agency would be key. But yeah, overall thoughts on this build I put together.
I think this is sort of the best of, this is almost the best case scenario of what they can do with what's realistically available to them, I think, because, as we've gone over all show, they're just like sort of handcuffed in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of different restrictions upon them. And so I do think that this is like, if you're trying to build the best team for next year, this is probably one of the better case scenarios that you can actually put together.
Yeah, it's
realistic. I guess, it's like we can all say,
realistic. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe is it illegal for the Dodgers to sign Giannis to a $200 million contract with deferred money and try to figure out a way to like get him to take the minimum this summer? Or I guess he's not a free agent. So maybe they could do that with LeBron, and then that leaves them room to trade for Giannis.
Yeah, well, what you are getting into is some of the future stuff. And this will be the last time I pull up a spreadsheet where I'm going to show the Lakers cap space situation for 2027. No, Giannis won't be a free agent then. Lakers are projected to have cap space next summer regardless. Now, here is the build I put together. The only players under contract for next year would be Luka, assuming he does extend, which would start him at 51 million. Alexander Walker and Finney Smith are the only other players that had signed a long-term deal. So Rui's expired, John Collins expired. Everyone else is basically expired, assuming LeBron is expired or declines his player option. So this is where the Reaves and Walker Kessler free agency gets really interesting, where Austin Reaves might have this low cap hold at 21 million. It might be a little higher. We have to wait to see where the salary cap lands for us to know for sure. And then Walker's is set at this. So the Lakers can go have about $42 million in cap space based on this projection with their first round pick. They'll have their first round pick next year while being able to re-sign Reaves and Walker Kessler next year. So that's the theory with the Lakers cap space and how it would work, that they already have a couple guys under contract. They could then go after someone. Most likely, there's not actually going to be able to go after anyone, just knowing how everybody signs extensions now. Because right now, credibly, the only two players I could see maybe becoming the best free agents next summer are Mikal Bridges, if he doesn't want to take his Knicks extension, because he could probably get more, and Jaren Jackson Jr., just because in case he doesn't want to stay with Memphis. I would guess most likely he renegotiates and stays with Memphis. But having this cap space could leverage a trade if there is someone who is going to be a free agent in 2026 and the Lakers are targeting him and they might want to try to sign him outright. The fact that the Lakers could keep most of their core guys while spending that much cap space does make the possibility of them going after someone else more realistic.
Yeah, the tough thing with talking about cap space with the Lakers is we just don't know how long LeBron's going to play. Like, it's just, even he said in that interview recently, right? He was like, I don't know. My kids don't really want me here. They keep telling me, keep playing, Dad. It's really kind of tricky to nail down what the Lakers cap sheet is going to look like while you have $50 million of it, undecided basically, or year to year, essentially. And then, then you also got to start thinking about paying players too. And what Austin's number looks like, if Rui is still on the team, what his number looks like. But look, I think the bigger takeaway when we talk about cap space is, basically everything is on the table here with the Lakers. I mean, once you make a Luka trade, that sends the message around the league that, like, wow, all right, they're capable of just about anything. And then on top of that, if you swap out Jeannie Buss for Guggenheim ownership, then everybody's like, what the hell? Like, the two things that they really, really needed, if you would have looked at the Lakers a year or so ago, the two things that they really, really needed was some kind of plan after LeBron and AD and probably an ownership change. And the Lakers got both of those things in the next 6 months from there. So it's as much as as much as these kinds of exercises are kind of tricky and stuff like that, it's almost too easy to underestimate what they're capable of, because so often they seem to pull a rabbit out of their rear end.
And they're going to have more resources devoted to find it to people who can do those kinds of things and figure out those sorts of complicated solutions. Like, my guess is within the next year, they will probably have at least one pro personnel scout, something that they do not possess currently. There are gonna be resources invested in the periphery of the things that are not capped that may allow them to make better decisions with this open money. Because it's like you said, like the 40 million, I don't know that it does that much for you. Like, you're not going to necessarily lure a max free agent with that under the current CBA, as crazy as that sounds.
Right.
But you can theoretically use it for like the leverage and trades. And, you're also, again, like probably just going to have more cooks in the kitchen that have better recipes over the course of time to build around Luka.
Yeah,
Yep.
the cap space thing, the best way to look at it is more like look what the Spurs just did, getting De'Aaron Fox, where De'Aaron said, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the Spurs next summer. They
Yeah.
have the cap space to sign me," and that's how that got done. So maybe there's something the Lakers could try to pull that way as well with someone maybe we're not even thinking about. But yeah, to your point about the pro personnel thing, that's really massive for the Lakers because in the past 5 years, yes, they did identify Austin Reaves and developed him. And then there was also Caruso. Those were like the two really significant finds. So, they're capable of doing it. But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, they've been the team mostly to, not necessarily find the Dorian Finney-Smiths, the Nickeil Alexander-Walkers. They've been the team that have been rewarding those guys after they've been made. So the Lakers, like that
Yeah.
would be very significant if they do build out this pro personnel department so they can have a much better chance at finding talented young players to help replenish their depth because assuming Luka's going to be there, maybe they bring in another co-star making max level money to replace LeBron's max slot in the future. That's going to be their avenue to sustain a deep team when they already don't really have anything to trade anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be, their amateur scouting, I think, has been good, and that's been like a real resource for them in terms of like finding some of these like underrated guys, from the G League, from the college ranks, whatever. But it's just the pro scouting has basically been like Rob and Kurt googling like top 30 free agents this year and like
I was
seeing if there's
watching the
anyone
games
they've
that
heard
just
of.
happened. It was like,
And
dang, that guy
so,
played well. Now I would, I'll to tack on to what Harrison was saying there. Who was the last veteran minimum contract who like really blew the Lakers away? With what they brought to the table. Christian Wood was a disaster. Cam Reddish was a disaster.
Malik Monk, probably.
Malik Monk, that was what, 4 years
Three.
ago?
Yeah,
Three, four
signing. Yeah,
years.
yeah.
So it's like, that's where the pro scout stuff really kicks in, right? Is they would have somebody who look at the Dodgers, how many guys that their scouting team looked across the major league scrap heap and found some talent somewhere and Max Muncy became he's on his way to potentially being the all-time leading Dodgers home run hitter ever. Like he's already in like the top 5 there. He was somebody that the Oakland A's just couldn't wait to get rid of. And for the Lakers, if they do bring in scouts who are capable of or more capable of
watching NBA
eyeing
games.
talent. Yeah. Or even like Harrison, how many times have you and I laughed about like how bad the Lakers intel is? They thought they were getting Kawhi. They thought that
Yeah.
was a done deal. It just didn't and it didn't
Yeah, the
happen. They
Lakers
thought they
need
were
to
getting
hire
Clay.
like they're going to have their own Lee Jenkins, to like sort of like that sort of role that's been pioneered throughout the league of like the former media guy who just gathers intel but for the team.
Yeah.
Like they're going to have people to do these sorts of things that are going to help improve their decision making on the margins, I would imagine.
And just so just so that we're all clear, Lakers, I'm interested. It would take a move back. It would be kind of tricky or whatever, but I'm in the middle of the country. It
I
might
think you're going
help.
to have to wait till the regime change at the top of the front office for that one.
All right. Well, that was the mock off season. I hope you all enjoyed it. Probably the one I felt like the less confident in as far as like putting something together, just with all the limitations. But I really enjoyed doing this one with you guys. Thanks for joining me. You make sure you guys are following Anthony on Twitter and Blue Sky at Anthony Irwin LA and Harrison on Twitter and Blue Sky as well at HM Faigen. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this a build you could see the Lakers realistically pulling off? And if so, did I cook, as the kids would say? Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you're following
Should
me on
Yossi be our
Twitter.
pro personnel scout? It's just let us know in the comments.
Make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky. My name Yossi Gaza, and I'm gonna be breaking down. I'm gonna have instant salary cap analysis to every transaction in the coming weeks as free agency happens. Make sure you're subscribed. The Third Apron on wherever you get your podcast and the newsletter on Substack. Yeah, no, it's gonna be a wild off season, and yeah, I'm ready. It's my thing. I break down the transactions as soon as they happen every year. Yeah, I'll probably be back this week with more streams and videos. I'll see you guys later.